Hello there, you handsome bunch. Adam Cleary here from FourFourTwo and Manchester United. What's going on there then? They spent a whole big heap of money again this summer, and some people, not everybody, I should clarify, not everybody, but some people think they should now have a team capable of challenging for the Premier League title. But so far, they've had a pretty minging performance against Wolves and now a pretty bad defeat against Tottenham. So if you're a Man United fan, should you be worrying? I say no. At least not yet. So here we are, it is Saturday evening. This is how Manchester United lined up against Tottenham. And I have to say, for the first half, I actually thought they did really well. Because the thing is, when a 4-3-3 plays a 4-2-3-1, then theoretically you should match up very nicely everywhere. Your two 8s should be able to just sit with the two pivots, and the 10 gets marked by a defensive midfielder. So in theory, you should be pretty well covered. Because a team like Man United will want to be aggressive, they won't want to allow the opposition to just build up willy-nilly. Then every single one of the three attackers will take a man, and then one of the 8s, depending on which defender is free, will then push on, leaving the player he's left in the shadow cover. Basically, he's left him, but he's stopping a pass getting to him. But Tottenham, obviously very aware Man United were going to do this, allowed Porro to invert from the right back position, adding an extra body in the middle, and that kind of gave us this. It's the very principle of that box midfield we saw so many teams do last year. Spurs now effectively have an extra man in the middle, outnumbering Man United, which means if at any point the press here fails, they can get a ball through that into the middle of the pitch. Very dangerous situation. It's why Arsenal, Man City, loads of teams tried to do it last year, and that's what they were trying to do to Man United. Casemiro had obviously been told specifically to stay with James Maddison where possible, so that left Mason Mount with this problem here. Theoretically, he should stay with Sarr because that was his man originally, but obviously Porro's now moved into the more aggressive area he's going to want to be pressing in, so he's kind of caught between these two players. If he pushes on, that kind of forces Shaw to come over and deal with Sarr, leaving Kulusevski free, but if he sits, that just leaves a really easy ball into Porro. But even just in the first couple of minutes of the game, Man United clearly recognised the situation, they saw it was a problem, and they changed what they were doing to completely nullify it. Fernandes just went and sat on Basuma. They allowed Garnacho to follow Porro into this space here, effectively giving them a 4 of their own and matching this up. And while this does mean that Rashford is then leading the press on his own, effectively getting outnumbered by the two defenders, whichever one he was leaving, the corresponding midfielder would push onto, but again, only in a straight line between the man they're marking and the ball, leaving what they call the same shadow cover. So when they weren't blocking the man, they were at least blocking the pass. And this worked really well in that first half. Man United kept forcing turnovers in this area every single time they got the ball. It looked like they were going to score. They managed to nick it off Porro a couple of times. It worked really well. And that's the thing, while this performance is kind of being lamented and the result is obviously quite bad and the nature of the goals they concede obviously makes it a lot worse, this first half, they had their game plan pretty much solid. They looked way better than they did against Wolves, and they should have been leading this match. This chance for Rashford, which again came from a turnover, looked really good. How many times do you think Bruno Fernandes is going to miss that header across the course of a season? It was going really well. But then, of course, Tottenham made a fairly simple change in the second half, and that kind of exposed all the same fragility they had against Wolves. And it was a change that theoretically Man United would have been very happy with. Like, Porro stopped inverting, which allowed Garnacho to play a lot wider. That's where he wants to be. That meant that Sarr wasn't pushing as far up, so Mount could follow him into a more advanced area. That's where he wanted to be. But what they effectively did was they made a huge area in the centre of the pitch that was just wide open. The only two players in it were James Maddison and Casemiro. And what we kept seeing was Maddison going deeper and deeper to receive the ball, Casemiro going with him, and once they were isolated in this one-on-one situation, Maddison just killed him dead. For a start, it created this huge gap between Manchester United's defence and their midfield, which Kulusevski was happy to go into, Richarlison was happy to go into, even Son started receiving the ball in it, meaning they were getting on it a lot more in the final third. But when they did get it to Maddison, you saw several times he was just so happy beating Casemiro one-on-one and just ending up in the exact same scenario they had against Wolves. And while you do have to caveat every mention of that game with the fact that they did ultimately go on and win it, anyone who watched it will tell you it didn't really look like they were going to do that. Once the game became stretched, which is what Tottenham tried really hard to do in the second half, Man United could not live with their running. They could not beat them in individual battles. And the reason this is such a problem for Manchester United is because Erik Ten Hag's entire mentality, something he's even spoken about himself this season, is that he wants them to be the best team in world football at transitions. Now, I know not everybody is a bad nerd, so if you're not sure what a transition is in football, basically imagine that Team A has the ball and they are attacking, and then Team B wins the ball off them for a couple of seconds because everybody's moving around, everybody's finding space, they're doing all that fun attacking stuff. People are out of position. Nobody is necessarily set. So those first few seconds after a ball is turned over are really important. And if you're one of those teams that's really, really good at them, then you can use the fact that you've just won the ball when the opposition aren't ready to defend to really go out and hurt them. And as we saw in the first half, Man United are really good at doing that. When they turn that ball over, they know straight away where to go, what to do, and how to hurt teams, and they should have been in the lead through doing that. But the problem they have at the minute is that turnovers work both ways. You also have to be good at doing them when you're the team that's lost the ball. And again, in that first half, you could see this was part of their identity, something they were working really hard on. You can see here they lose the ball this time, and Tottenham try and spring a quick counter on, but everybody's alive to what's going on. Mason Mount, who is, again, you've got to state, one of the best off-the-ball players in the Premier League, makes a really intelligent run, cuts that out, and they get it back straight away. So what's the problem then? I can hear you banging on your screen. If they're this good at transitions, and transitions are so important, why were they so bad against Wolves? Why have they lost this game? And one word, mate. Intensity. I have already seen some people say this season that the problem Man United have got is that they massively overcommit when they're attacking, and that leaves Casemiro exposed. And I mean, they do commit when they attack. Right now, they've got two wide players who both want to come inside with the ball. Anthony especially just loves to get on his left foot, which means they need both the fullbacks to try and provide either underlapping or overlapping runs. And you've got Fernandes, obviously great creative player. He's just fallen off his base, and Mount kind of wants to be in the space as well. So it does sort of leave Casemiro all on his own. To glue you, I'll be him out for 6 weeks. But they're not stupid. Like Bruno Fernandes, for all you think of him as this great creative force, if you haven't watched a lot of Man United, these stats will probably surprise you. Like, yeah, he's great on the ball and he makes things happen, but he also doesn't shirk his defensive responsibility. He wins the ball, he contests, he puts tackles in, he's positionally very aware, so he's not leaving anybody massively isolated. And likewise, Anthony, for all it sometimes looks like he hasn't got a clue what he's doing, he does take instruction from Ten Hag really well. If he is told to track his fullback, if he makes a run into your half, he does that. Like, look at this. This is not the recovery run of a player who isn't bothered about defending. But the reason I said intensity is because it's all well and good to have these instructions and be able to carry them out, but if you do not do them consistently and at a high level for an entire game, then you will get punished by teams that do. And this is what Man United's current problem is. Like, right now, this looks to me like a system that does actually work pretty well. They're just not executing it effectively for the entire duration of a match. Like, if we just look at this little freeze frame here and just presume you hadn't already seen this goal, and I said, point to me on this screen where you think Tottenham are about to pass the ball, not in a million years would you think it was capable of going here. This isn't some kind of counter-attack, it's not some lightning break. Man United is supposed to be fairly set here, and yet Kulusevski is standing in about 8 square miles of space on the right-hand side. Garnacho does then run back, but it would be incredibly generous to consider that a sprint, and he even hesitates at the last second as he's about to pull the trigger. But just, shall we rewind this clip? At the start of this move, this is Pape Sarr, and this is Man United's entire midfield three. Disregarding the fact for a second that Kulusevski's entirely unmarked, you would actually say they're pretty well set here. The back four are nice and compact. All three of the midfielders are in the correct shape and in front of them. It should be pretty difficult to find a way through. And here as Kulusevski drives towards the box, Man United have 5 defenders already in it. The 2 Tottenham players are tightly marked, and only Sarr, who is capable of making a late run, still has both Mount and Casemiro capable of picking him up. And crucially, as the ball comes in, not one Man United player has a look around to assess the situation. Like, even from this shot here, Manchester United's midfield three are perfectly positioned specifically to stop a runner like Sarr from getting in. They've got 2 players who can go with him, they've got 1 player who's already ahead of him, and yet somehow he is the only one who makes the intense run required to get on the end of that ball. It happened again almost immediately afterwards. Like, Anthony has done the right thing. He has tracked his runner to this point, and then instead of upping the intensity to follow him into the box, he just points and allows him to run clean through. A few minutes after that, Manchester United are perfectly set here. Fernandes is in a great position, but as soon as his runner leaves, he just stands there. And then by some distance, the worst one of all, the second goal. Like, Ben Davies has come on at this point. You know, really lightning fast, really scary Ben Davies. He comes on and he again leaves Fernandes. He just sort of lightly jogs into the box, stands there for a couple of seconds asking for the ball, and despite the fact Eriksen and Varane can both see him, neither of them put in the sprint required to cover that man. Now, yes, okay, this one was a known goal, but if you just look at it here, Ben Davies should bury that. It shouldn't require Martinez to put it in for him. And if you're a Man United fan, this should be the really concerning thing. Look at the body language here. You are 1-0 down. You are desperately trying to get an equaliser. 3 of you are within mere yards of a player who looks like he might be about to bury it. Where's the urgency? Where's the desperation? And the really mad thing is, Man United still quite easily could have got something out of this game. They're still a really, really good side. It's a really good example of how wanting it more might sound like a cliche, but it does actually carry. Like, between Ten Hag's Man United and Postecoglou's Tottenham, you've got 2 teams who are both trying out new things, they're both exploring new systems, but they are both really dependent on a lot of high-intensity running, either to close down space or to break into it. And in Tottenham, you had a team that was willing to do that for 90 minutes, and in Man United, you didn't. Now, why that is, it's way too early to say. Their fitness levels might just not be there. They might not have had the proper pre-season preparation, or it might be a mindset thing, or it might be an attitude thing. We don't know yet, but what's clear off these first 2 games is that Man United have a really great plan here. They're just not doing it properly. At their best, they are forcing high turnovers and creating chances, and they are tracking their runners to make sure that the space they're inviting isn't too much of a problem, but in just large portions of the game, they're not doing that. And as you saw with Maddison and Casemiro, when they don't do it properly, it leaves players isolated, which makes them individually look dreadful. And that, my friends, is why if you're a Man United fan, you should not be worried about those first 2 results, but if it keeps going this way, then you might need to be. But anyway, more important than that, that's just what I think, isn't it? So if you are a Man United fan, or even if you're not, please give me your thoughts, your theories, your opinions, all of them in the comments below. We do really love to read them all. And if you did enjoy this video, please do consider subscribing to FourFourTwo here on YouTube. That is the one metric that really does help us out and helping us grow the channel. And we've got some really big news to announce soon, which is partly down to you guys and subscribing. So thank you for that. But if you haven't done it yet, then please do. In the meantime, though, grab me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, literally anywhere you like, at Adam Cleary, Clery, FourFourTwo on all the socials. It's in the corner. I'm not going to read it out again. And until next time, bye. That's what I was looking for. Bye. Bye.